Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, Attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Luke Sanchez with Concho Hearts Hospice. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, we've had a lot of chuckles this morning, so we'll try to contain it during this podcast so that we're not just giggling through the whole thing. And it's so cool to have you on, and because we're going to talk about choosing the right hospice and what families deserve to know. And so I got my first experience with hospice 20 years ago when my grandmother was declining. And I had such an unreasonable expectation about how hospice worked, but they were so good for the family. So let's kind of dig in. I just want to let you know what a good experience it was for me.
Yeah,
So when a family hears the word hospice, they often feel overwhelmed. What's the first thing you want them to understand about what hospice is and what it is not? Because I think that's really important for people to know.
absolutely. So, hospice is not about dying, and that is kind of a preconceived notion a lot of people have. When you have a loved one, and the doctor, the hospital, whoever comes to you and says, "Hey, we got to pick out hospice," most people in their head immediately go towards, "Oh no, my loved one's about to die," and oftentimes they think this means it's the end. I'm giving up. And so one of the things that I try to really help my families understand is hospice is not giving up. Hospice does not necessarily mean you're signing their life away now they're done. You're giving up everything. That does not what it means. Hospice means we are going to provide peace in the chaos. Hospice means the rest of their life is designed to be the best of their life. Hospice means you're not going to have to drag them from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor. You're not going to have to drag them hospital in and out, in and out, in and out. Hospice is designed to take all of that burden off of you. Hospice is designed to provide the care to you, to your loved one. And one other thing that a lot of families don't understand is hospice is not just about the patient. So with Concho Hearts, the way I built this out, we we treat people, not diagnoses. And part of that is also supporting the family. The family is usually the ones that are bearing the weight of the entirety of the diagnosis, prepping everything. I got to get ready for whatever could happen tomorrow. The chaos that some of these families have to go through by the time they're finally introduced into hospice is a lot. And so hospice is designed to be that piece, be the guide, and help you be able to just spend time with your family, spend time with your loved one, remove the chaos, spend time with your loved one, make sure that the rest of their life is the best of their life. So that is one thing that I try really hard to help families understand. And I do a lot of education with hospitals and doctors. That way, the way we're explaining it truly helps the families understand that what we're here for is support. We're here to help. We're here to remove the chaos. We're here round the clock to remove chaos. So that's one of the first things I really try to help families understand.
And so, well, that's good advice for sure, and very well put, by the way. And so,
Thank you.
but there's a lot of hospice companies in Texas. Some good, some not so good. And what are the non-negotiable qualities that families should look for when they're evaluating a hospice provider?
Absolutely. This is really important. And even when families don't ask, I try to help them see because you have patient driven hospices and you have volume driven hospices. Here's the key about hospice: everything's going to go great at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's 2 a.m. on a Saturday when there's chaos and there's respiratory distress that you need a good hospice. So, what families need to ask are the questions about staffing. How many patients does that nurse have? What does that look like? If you've got a nurse that's got 20 plus patients, how responsive are they going to be? Here's another thing that the families need to ask, and I encourage every family to ask this: call their on call number. because when you need that hospice the most is after hours. I guarantee it. During the day, you can call your nurse 9 times out of 10. Every nurse that I employ, I ask them, are you okay giving out your cell phone number? Because during the day, I expect you to answer that number. I expect you to respond back to text. These families aren't reaching out for nothing. They have questions, and we need to provide support to them. Call the on-call number. There have been times where I've met families in hospitals in the evening, and I'm talking to them about hospice, and I tell them that because they hospitals and a lot of doctors' offices, they do a very good job of providing options. Here's 3 hospices, talk to all of them. Here's 5 hospices, talk to all of them. And I always tell them, anybody could tell you anything. Pick up that phone and call that number after hours and see what response you get. Do you get somebody that answers the phone and goes, oh, yeah, this is the answering service. I can't really help you. Let me have a nurse call you back. Or do you have a nurse that answers the phone and goes, okay, no problem. Do this. I'm 45 minutes away. I'm 20 minutes away. I'm on my way right now. Because after hours matters sometimes more than anything else. So you want to understand that. Culture is also a very big thing. You should never sign up with a hospice where you feel like you're getting sold on hospice. You should sign up with a hospice where the person that is talking to you is there because they care. They want to make sure your questions are getting answered. Their goal is not sign this dotted line. Their goal is let me answer every single question you have. And with the young ladies I have that work for me that do a lot of our patient care coordinating to help educate families, they're not above, you know what, let me call my nurse real quick. Let me get her on speakerphone because you got some technical questions and I'm not a nurse. I want to get you the right answers. Because the goal is not sign the dotted line. The goal is by the time that family has made the decision, which is already a heavy decision to make, they're feeling comfortable. I have made the right decision. And so oftentimes when I meet with families, when the young ladies that work with me meet with families, the decision is not made right then because I encourage these families. I want you to talk it over. I want you to make sure. Now, if it's an urgent thing, by all means, I'll get a nurse out there right now. Let's rock and roll. We don't want your loved one in distress. But if it is a situation where we have a moment, I want the families to take a moment because it is such a heavy decision to make. And usually when I leave there, no matter what time of day it is when I meet with these families, I go, here's my on-call number. I need you to call this number after 5 p.m. Please do that for yourself. Give yourself the peace of mind knowing how that's going to go, because I promise you that's when you'll need to know. And they usually do. I'll usually get a call from my on-call nurse and I'll go, I just got a call from a family. They were just checking to see how our on-call worked. So that's really important. You want to make sure your nurse isn't overwhelmed that you're going to have. You want to make sure that they are going to be there. They're going to support you. You're not going to get told, someone will call you back in a couple of hours, hopefully. Another question, and I know my answer is kind of long, but there's so much to touch on here, is you want to understand the pharmacy situation. With hospice, a lot of people don't realize this, but our pharmacies are the ones that are typically responsible for all medication deliveries. You want to ask them, what hours can your pharmacy deliver? If I got a problem and my loved one needs a medication at 4 a.m., can your pharmacy get that to me? Or am I going to be waiting until 8 a.m. when they open? Because that is important.
I didn't even think about that one.
Nobody does. Nobody does until you need it, until it's a situation at 2 a.m. and the nurse is going, I don't know. I mean, the pharmacy will open soon, hopefully. So you want to ask that question too. Can your pharmacy deliver 24/7? Can your pharmacy deliver at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve? What are we looking at for that? Because it's always in the least expected times that is the most chaos. Ask that question. What is options? So like if you asked me that, I'd say, well, I actually have 4 pharmacies. They all deliver 24/7. What we're going to do if it's an emergency situation, we're going to find the pharmacy closest to you that can deliver the fastest. And if they can't get it out fast enough, the nurse is going to go pick it up from them and bring it to you. Because you need it when you need it. So
yeah, most definitely.
I know that's kind of a long answer, but there's a lot involved with that.
All right, but you did mention something that I think it's very important early when you started talking. You talked about staffing. It can make or break the hospice experience. So how can families assess whether a company has enough nurses, aides, and support? I mean, what's the number? What's a good number? What's a bad number? So that they know,
Mhm.
because I'm one of those that I need those kind of answers.
Yeah.
For me, I would want those list of things that you would want me to check out with other ones. I would want
Mhm.
that list. I'd want you to hand me that list that says, call after hours and here's the number. Do they have
Yeah.
a pharmacy? Is their staffing more than so many things? Because
Yeah.
that's the stuff that people are going to want to know. That way you can
Yeah.
compare. So,
Mhm.
so tell our listeners, what's the right answer?
So, so when it comes to staffing, it what you want to understand, you can just straight up ask them, what is the average caseload for your nurses? And you want that magic number to be between 12 and 15. If it starts ticking 15 to 20, 20 to 25, I would walk away from that in an instant. If their answer is, well, they typically run to 12 to 15 patients, they have a backup LVN that works as a team. So no matter what, if they're tied up, someone else is available. If that other LVN's tied up too, we've got another nurse that's en route. So what you want to understand with that is, what is the basic caseload expectations for the nurses? You also don't want a nurse that's burned out. I mean, if you can imagine, if you got to manage more people than is doable, you're already exhausted. You're already mentally and emotionally taxed, because this is an emotionally taxing job for these nurses. So ask them, what's the typical caseload your nurses run? Just straight up ask them. If they beat around the bush, I would wash my hands from that. If they cannot give you a realistic answer because they're afraid to give you a realistic answer, I would expect problems, because there's a lot of amazing hospices in this industry, a lot of them. There's also a lot of hospices that I wouldn't put my loved one on.
Mhm.
And when it comes to making that decision, you've got to make sure you are really confident in that. If you ask a question to a hospice and they give you a beat around the bush, not real answer, I would not go with them. I need realistic answers. I need realistic expectations, because if I can't set the clear expectation, I don't know how this is going to play out. So again, 12 to 15 is that magic number. You want to make sure that they have other nurses supporting that nurse. So like I said, with us, we run in teams, an RN and an LVN. The RN is the case manager. She's the one in charge. LVN is the backup support. We also have a director of nursing who will jump in the field and go see a patient if those two are tied up. So you want to make sure that there is always somebody available. When it comes to the aide, the thing you can ask is not so much how many patients does the aide have, but what kind of visit can I get? Because there are hospices that'll say, well, we can do 2 CNA visits a week. And that's for your basic ADLs and care needs. It's showering, grooming, shaving, changing bedding, things like that. There's hospices that'll say we do 5 days a week, we could do 7 days a week. It's really based on need. So if you asked me that, what I would say is we can go up to 7 days a week. That doesn't mean it's the right thing, because everybody thinks more is better. However, if your loved one can't really tolerate showers that often, being moved around that often, what my case manager wants to do is work with you guys to understand what is that magic number. And that magic number can change. Maybe we started at 3 days a week, then we increase it to 5 days a week, then we decrease it back to 3 days a week. There's always this magic number, because we don't want the shower or the bed bath to be so taxing on them. It's wearing them out too much. And so there's a magic number there. But you want to understand is their flexibility. Because again, my aid visits rotate. They typically start around 3 days a week, and then they'll increase up, sometimes they decrease down, because as a person starts declining and getting to the point where that shower is the least of their concern, what we want to do is make sure we're keeping them clean, we're supporting their care needs without too much. And so it's got to fluctuate. There can't be a solid, this is what you get, don't throw a fit. So the other thing to ask is, you know, tell me about your chaplain. Tell me about your social worker. So with hospice, Medicare mandates certain disciplines. Every hospice has a chaplain. Every hospice has a social worker. Families don't understand that. Families don't know what those roles actually are. But those two roles, in my opinion, and that's not just because I'm also a chaplain, is some of the most important that you could get. Because if you have a loved one on hospice and you need help with preparation, you need help with the POA, you need help trying to find caregivers, you need help with funeral arrangements, having a social worker that checks in with you every month, hey, how's it going? What can I do? What are you working on? What can I help you with? Getting those answers. She can then work behind the scenes to take care of all that stuff for you. Here, if you fill this out, I'll get it notarized. We'll get the doctor to sign it. Everything will be solid on that. Here's the contacts of the funeral home that we recommend. We've worked with them a lot. My social worker is the resource guide extraordinaire, the chaplain. I've had a lot of people that will initially tell the nurse, I don't need a chaplain. Sometimes it's, I don't need a chaplain. I've been going to church my whole life. Sometimes it's, I don't need a chaplain. I don't go to church. I'm not a Christian. I'm Islamic, or, whatever. The chaplain's job is not to go in there and be a preacher. The chaplain's job is emotional support and, if appropriate, spiritual care. And to everybody, it is different. When I go out and do chaplain visits, one of my biggest things that I do is active listening and open-ended questions. Because here's the fun fact. You're either going to store everything up into trauma or you're going to talk it out. You know how when you got just something heavy on you and it's burdening you, and then you talk to your friend and you tell them all about it, all of a sudden you feel so much better. This weight has been lifted. That is exactly what the chaplain is supposed to do. Sit there, listen, and ask the questions so you feel comfortable to talk. And every situation is different. Sometimes I am sitting there praying with them, singing gospel songs. Sometimes they're telling me about the motorcycle gang that they were in the 60s and how they spent their life in jail. And that's okay, because my job is active listening and open-ended questions to support. So those two roles are huge, because you can have the most amazing nurse in the whole world that's giving you just the right medication, but having the added resource guide and the added person to talk to changes the game. So ask about their chaplain and their social worker, because that matters. That really does. Tell me about your chaplain and your social worker. I need to make sure that the people that are in those roles are actually going to support me.
So look, I hope that will do this again with me, because I feel like we need part 2. And so, because we're out of time today, but I
Oh
have more
no!
questions. I have more questions. So I'm gonna get you back on the podcast so that we
Yes,
can
ma'am.
keep talking about this, because this is important and you have such good information, and I know how good your hospice company is, so we want to make sure that the listeners can really get the value that you're giving. And but just for today, and then we'll do this again when we do it. It's part 2. Tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can call my number 832-450-1118. You could text me if you got questions. Even if you're not in the Texas or Houston area, I promise if you reach out and you need guidance, I can connect you with what you need. My email address, the letter L, Sanchez at conchoheartshospice.com. That's CONCHOHEARTS hospice.com. Reach out if you have questions. I can be a guide, even if my hospice isn't necessarily the right situation for you.
So perfect, Luke. And I look forward to having you on again to finish this conversation.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.